So starting with the drink, I'm going to make a vanilla matcha smoothie. And in the summer, this is how I start every morning. What I'm going to do is use the plant milk. I'm choosing oat milk today. No particular reason other than it's just my favorite milk of the moment. But made with oats. Almond milk works great in this. Sure, you bet.
That has more calories than almond and cashew milk.
Yeah, and the rice milk is also pretty caloric. But just use which one you like. Like I said, this is my favorite of the moment. I'm going to be using a plant-based protein powder called Ollie. Target sells this, Whole Foods sells it, and you can also find it online directly from Ollie. It's plant-based, it's clean, and it's one of the few protein powders that I've tried that doesn't leave that gritty residue aftertaste. So I'm a big fan of the Ollie. So what I'm going to do is get some ice in my blender. I'm going to put a couple of scoops of the Ollie protein powder. They make different flavors. This is the vanilla one that I've chosen. I'm going to put a couple of splashes of vanilla, pure vanilla extract. And also, in the handout that's waiting for you on the tables, I have all of the recipes written down for you today to take home with you. You're welcome. So, a couple of splashes, a big splash. And the other star of the drink is matcha. I used to teach a class just on how to use matcha. There are a lot of medical professionals that recommend matcha. If any of you are not familiar with it, what it is high-quality green tea leaves that are dried and ground into a really fine powder. So the recommended serving per day is a teaspoon. When you consume a teaspoon of this, you're getting 10 times the potency of a glass of regular green tea. And the reason it's so much more potent is because you're actually consuming the whole tea leaf with this. Whereas if you steep a glass of green tea, you dunk your tea bag and then you discard it. This way you're eating that whole tea leaf. So 10 times more of all of the great things that are in matcha. Matcha's a superstar for nutrition. It's full of vitamin C, A, K, E, B6, B12, zinc, you name it, it's in here. The only thing I'll caution you on is because of the B6, the B12, and the naturally occurring caffeine, it is a bit of a stimulant. So I don't recommend it after midday. That makes it a great morning drink or an afternoon pick-me-up kind of drink. This time of day, you're going to get such a small amount that it shouldn't be a problem. But I know some people, if they have it after 3 or 4, they might have trouble sleeping. When you're using the plant milks, make sure you give them a good shake before you do. Plant milks are ground up plants, and they do settle over time, unlike cow's milk. So I'm just curious, with a show of hands, can you show me if you already follow exclusively a plant-based diet? Okay. So the rest of you, are you here because you want to learn more about it? You're trying to? Fantastic. Partials, okay. Well, fantastic. I'm glad you're here. This particular class series, these 3 classes, are designed to help you have some stepping stones towards hopefully an ultimate goal of whole foods plant-based eating. I've worked with a lot of people over the year, and one of the things that I've found is that the people that just try and cold turkey stop their old ways and start the plant-based, they just don't make it. They don't stick with it. I've had much, much more success with the people that take small steps. So I'm hoping that through these 3 classes, I can give you the motivation to take some small steps with the goal of getting there. These 3 classes are introductory classes. In the new year, I'm going to do some classes that are more detailed and more specific. For instance, I'd like to do a class on how to make vegan cheeses and milks. I don't know if that would interest anybody. Yeah? Okay. How to make seitan. Are you guys familiar with what seitan is? It's a wonderful meat substitute. If you are used to eating meat, it's a great way to kind of wean yourself off of that. It's made usually with the protein from wheat. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this blender on. It's pretty loud. Give me a second here. And messy. Just made a little bit of a mess.
Question for you.
You bet.
How is a plant-based milk made?
I'd actually like to do a class on that. Depending on what you use, for instance, like an almond milk, you'll soak the almonds, get them soft, and then you'll blend them in a high-quality blender like this, and then put with some water, and then put it through a mesh, a fine mesh, and what comes out the other side is your milk. Yeah.
What was the last thing you put in? You slipped some things in. You didn't say what it was.
I'm sorry. Protein powder, matcha, oat milk. I put a couple of teaspoons of unprocessed organic sugar. Looks like I'm taking the library's tablecloth home and washing it this weekend. I made a little bit of a mess. So I cook. One of the things I do is I also develop recipes. So I'm in the bad habit of not measuring. I just like to throw things in and see what works, and then I figure out if I like it by tasting it. So I want to make sure I've got bear with me. I tried really hard to give you good measurements on the recipes that I'm sending home with you today, but if something's a little off, feel free to adjust it to your own taste. The next thing we're going to make is what I call my tuna-less tuna. This is a recipe that I've made at the last few restaurants I've worked for, and it's always a bestseller. And I think you'll find it's satisfying, it's good. It doesn't taste like fish, but you would use this tuna-less tuna in the place of tuna fish. It makes a great sandwich on toasted rye bread. It makes a great dip with crackers. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare some. And then as soon as I get this ready, I'm going to have you go up to the tables. So a good quality food processor and a good quality blender, like a Vitamix, probably my favorite kitchen tools. I'm running out of room here. Also, don't let me forget, I want to talk to you about supplements. I'm not a big fan of vitamins or supplements. If you're eating right, you're not going to need any. However, 2 exceptions. One, I don't know about anybody else, but we live in the desert, and I slather myself with sunscreen from head to toe almost every day of the year. So vitamin D3, I just take a supplement daily. The other one is B12. So I know there's information out there saying that vegans can't get B12 because they don't eat animals. How many of you know that B12 is actually an organism that lives in soil and not in animals? So what happens when a cow or an animal is allowed to graze, they naturally consume some as they're nibbling away at the plants that are in the soil. That puts B12 in their bodies. You eat part of their body, you get some of the B12. The reality is that animals don't really get to go and graze anymore. They get fed B12 supplements and get a diet that's a pellet form, something like that. So they don't have naturally occurring B12, which is it's one of the myths I want to make sure we cleared up. B12 is a supplement in a lot of foods, but it's just a safe bet to take a supplement. I take one a week. It's 2,500, the strength. Once a week. Most vegans do that I'm aware of. Only once a week. Yeah, if you have that strength, that's all you need. It doesn't. And for the most part, you can't get too much of it. I don't think this is really happening in the desert, but I have family in the Northwest, and one of the things they're doing up there now is testing people over 50 for their B12 levels. I haven't heard of that happening here in the desert, but in the Northwest, it's pretty common. It's just part of the normal annual blood work that's done, because they're finding even meat eaters are deficient in the B12. So regardless of how you eat, I don't think it's a bad idea to have a supplement. When you buy the supplements, it can be really challenging to find some that are made without animal products. D3 in particular, I couldn't find a single D3 option at Target, Whole Foods. Where else did I look? I tried and shop around, do all the shopping so that you don't have to spend your time running from store to store. Walmart is the only place I could find a D3 gummy without gelatin in it. You don't want gelatin. You guys familiar with what gelatin is? It's ground up hooves. It's a thickening agent. We don't need to eat animal feet when we eat our vitamins, just not necessary. So for whatever reason, Walmart has the brand Spring Valley that is gelatin-free. Yes. Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's gummy options, there's pill options. I take the pill, the under-the-tongue pill for the B12. Honestly, I kind of like these D3 because they're sweet, and I feel like I've had dessert if I take my daily D3. But whatever works for you. Okay, vegan tuna, tunaless tuna, is made mostly of garbanzo beans. As you enter into plant-based eating, you're going to find that garbanzo beans are in a lot of different things. They're incredibly versatile. So versatile, in fact, that most people are familiar that you can make hummus with garbanzo beans, but these beans, when they're in the food processor, they actually shred and kind of have a flaky consistency. So they make a great tuna substitute. The other thing that I think is really interesting about garbanzo beans is you can actually reserve the water that's in the can of beans when you open them. That's called aquafaba. It's bean juice. you can actually whip it up like a meringue. So just put it in a blender like you would egg whites and whip it, season it, and I use it as a topping on savory soups, like a spicy pumpkin soup. I'll put a savory meringue on top made from the bean juice. You can actually sweeten it and use it for dessert purposes too. That's something we'll cover in the third class, the dessert class. But to get us started with the tunaless tuna, the first thing I'm going to do is grind some carrots. I have some organic carrots that I peeled and chopped earlier today. And it's really important that this goes in first, or these go in first. You can't put the beans in first, or you're going to be making a different recipe. You're going to end up with hummus. A little bit more. Okay. They're finely shredded to little pieces. And the reason I put carrots in my tunaless tuna is it gives the mixture some body and some color and just some extra nutrients. The next thing I'm going to put in are some pickles. You can use dill pickles. I'm using today bread and butter pickles, just whatever you enjoy. Sure.
In general, is like carrots would make that a higher glycemic index food.
Yes, carrots do have a higher natural sugar content than a lot of other things. But
Is a lot of vegan food higher glycemic?
not necessarily. It just depends. But here's the great thing. I'm assuming you're asking about the glycemic index because you're concerned about diabetes or maybe have. Okay. One of the great things is following a plant-based diet, you just don't find people with diabetes. It just doesn't occur like it does in the rest of the population. So you're not going to find people that are vegans. It's just not something that you have to be as concerned about. The interesting thing is that the recent studies show that diabetes actually comes from meat, eating a meat-heavy diet rather than sugar. And we've all been taught otherwise. We've all been taught that breads or pastas, sugars, sweets, that's what causes diabetes. Check the evidence, don't take my word for it, but look at the latest studies, nutritionfacts.org. What they think is that, well, hopefully you all know that as you consume animal products, it breaks down into your bloodstream, into tiny, tiny little pieces of fat. Over time, it goes through your system, your veins, your arteries, your tissue, and it slowly starts to clog and narrow the openings on everything. And that's what they think is going on with diabetes now. These are straight from the can, but I did drain them and rinse them. Right now, I'm adding in some diced sweet onion and the pickles. Again, the carrots go first because they need the most time with the processing. The pickles and onions second. You don't want to put the onions in first as well because onions can turn bitter if you process them too much. So I'm making a large quantity. Normally I make my whole batch just in the processor, but because I'm making a larger quantity today, my processor is just not big enough. So I'm going to actually dump some of these out before I add the garbanzo beans, or dump the carrot mixture out. This is a great thing to have at home just in your refrigerator. Before I started serving this at the restaurant, I would make a batch on Sunday for my family, and it would just get snacked on all week. And it's a great, easy thing just to open the refrigerator, grab the little tub of the tunaless tuna, and just have some whole grain crackers, or dip some vegetable sticks in it, or toast a piece of rye bread. It's wonderful on toasted rye bread. So now I'm going to just begin adding these garbanzo beans. And I'm sorry, I don't have a bigger processor. We're going to have to do a couple of batches here. But just a few light pulses and check the consistency. That's all it took. I'm happy with how it is here with just, I think that was 3 pulses. And I'll do one more batch, and then I think we'll have enough to get started. And I always use the pulse feature instead of the on-off feature. You have more control that way. And I also think that the mixture rotates within the processor better if it gets that on and off pulsing. I brought a small container for each of you to take home today of the tunaless tuna. And we're also going to stuff some miniature peppers with it and then try it with some crackers. So let me get this pulsed here. So I'm hoping that if you don't already eat this way, I'm hoping that I can show you a few products and tricks today that you can add at home to help you take some steps in the whole foods, plant-based direction. One of the things with the whole foods, plant-based diet is we try not to eat a lot of oil, anything that's really been processed. Mayonnaise is oil-based. Well, the vegan mayonnaise anyways. Traditional mayonnaise is made with eggs. But I'm going to show you my favorite vegan mayonnaise today. And I'm not telling you that mayonnaise is health food and that everybody should eat a cup of mayonnaise a day. But what I'm hoping is that if you're used to using mayonnaise in your daily life, that you'll try a vegan brand and just slowly start phasing out some of the animal products, just to help you with the transition. My favorite one is Best Foods. You can find Best Foods vegan mayo at Target, and I believe Albertsons has it now too. I think Vegenaise is incredibly bland. I like more flavor in things, and I also feel like Vegenaise is a little bit oily or greasy, the consistency of it, whereas this is a cleaner one. I don't feel like I have a greasy palate after I take a bite of the tuna. Just personal preference, experiment. I'm just showing you some of my favorite things today. Now I'm going to add a little bit of seasoning. I put pepper in just about everything I make, white pepper, black pepper. Today I'm putting black pepper in here. And the other thing that's in just about everything I make is granulated onion. I know we added fresh onion in the mixture, but it needs granulated onion too. I've put the quantities in your recipe that you're going home with today, but I just eyeball it. The other thing I'm going to put in is some diced celery. And I don't put that through the processor because I want it to be in large pieces. Just going to mix this up real quick. So who's had vegan tuna before made with garbanzo beans? A few of you. What's that? Oh, it is. Like I said before, it's just a great snack. You can make it once a week, keep a container in the fridge, and it'll last the week. And it's hearty, it's satisfying, it'll keep you full. It's full of fiber, vitamins. The other tip I want to give you for healthy eating is there's a lot of confusing information out there about, well, you need to make sure you have the right amino acids, and I don't know, I've just heard some very confusing ways or advice for people on how to eat a plant-based diet. One of the easiest things I can tell you is just try and put as much color into every meal that you can possibly think of. Just think of the rainbow and try and find a fruit or a vegetable to add to your meal so that all those colors are represented. And the reason for that is, one, you'll get that variety, but the different colors that naturally occur in the different items represent different vitamins and minerals. So if you're eating, you've got the rainbow of colors, you're getting everything you need, all your nutrients. So the next item we're going to make are jicama tacos. And I don't normally use taco seasoning. I use my own spices, but I thought for simplicity's sake, just to get you started, I would use some seasoning packets today. And our filling in the taco is going to be a combination of Light Life brand Smart Ground, it's called. And it's a ground beef substitute. And I'm going to combine it with some kidney beans. What I'm trying to do is to give you a sampling of a bunch of different plant-based items that are on the market that are there to help you transition. So, like I mentioned earlier, I think people have a lot more success if they gradually make changes rather than trying to empty out their entire pantry and starting with all new, unfamiliar things. I'm going to have you taste a vegan sour cream product today and this beef substitute, and see what you think. Right now I'm sauteing some diced sweet onion and in water. So as your water cooks out, just keep adding a little bit more water if you want to cook this without oil. So I'm just letting these onions soften. The type of onion is your personal preference, but I always use the sweet onions. You can usually get those year-round. Very few of them have that sharp, unpleasant bite. I use them in just about everything. A fun fact about onions is they're actually high in antioxidant properties. And amazingly, when you cook them, it actually increases in levels of antioxidants. There's a few different vegetables that do that. Cabbage is another one. So don't hesitate. I know a lot of us want to eat fresh things, but nothing wrong with cooking your onion. It actually is going to give it more antioxidants. So when you work with these plant-based meat substitutes, most of them are going to be pre-cooked. So you don't cook them like you would, or this one, like ground beef. Ground beef, when you would make tacos, it would normally go in at the beginning. It has all that fat in it that comes out and hydrates the pan. This stuff, if you cook it like that, it's going to dry out because it doesn't have the animal fat in it. So it goes in after your onion or anything else you may be cooking is tender. I've just started a series of YouTube cooking videos, and one of the things that I'm always talking about in there, and I can tell you guys firsthand, is a great way to add extra flavor to anything you're cooking, like a soup, a sauce, a stew, is to, when you're cooking your vegetables down in the beginning, let your moisture cook out just barely so that you get a little bit of a brown residue in your pan, and then loosen it with some water. In cooking terms, it's called deglazing your pan, but all it means is adding some liquid to release that brown coating that your vegetables have made on the bottom of the pan. And what that does is that releases the really, really nice flavor into whatever you're making. And that's what gives something like a soup, a sauce, that depth of flavor. So that's one of my favorite tips. When I'm making a soup, I will deglaze my pan 2 or 3 times just to get that extra flavor in my soup. Mixture, because I add onion to everything. I'm going to add some of these taco seasoning packets that I don't normally use. We'll see how that goes. But I want to make sure you guys get to try this. Just adding a little water here. So I have a really fun new product on the market here. They are jicama tortillas. And what they are is just taking the jicama plant, peeling it, and cutting it into these discs. And they make wonderful soft taco shells. They can be found at Albertsons. I just saw a different brand at Whole Foods. But what they kind of remind me of when you put your taco together is a lettuce wrap. And they make a great appetizer because you can make them ahead of time and they're not going to get soggy like a regular tortilla will. Last thing I'm going to do with my mixture here is add some kidney beans. Does everybody have filling, lettuce, tomatoes, sour cream? And then I'm short the chipotle bottle, so if you have a table without it, borrow it from your neighbor. That's the best part. When I was in the store last week and looking at all these nice fall vegetables that are out, I just thought, I need to do something with these. So I bought just about every vegetable that looked good. And I have oven roasted them. And what I'm going to do is make a base with a hummus-like base, but I'm going to make it with cashews and garbanzo beans. And we're going to put that base on the platter. and then stand the vegetables in it, and then drizzle it with a little balsamic reduction, and it's going to be delicious, if I do say so myself. So I'm going to take some cashews. These are available in the bulk foods at Smart & Final and Whole Foods. Make sure you buy the pieces rather than the whole cashews. They're about half the price of the whole cashews. Oops. And then in a lot of vegan cooking, whenever you want to sort of replicate a cheesy flavor, we use something called nutritional yeast. It comes powdered and it comes in flakes. And that's another bulk food item. Looks like this. I'm going to put about a tablespoon of nutritional yeast in here with my cashews. It's not on there? Who typed that up? About a tablespoon. Nutritional yeast. I'm going to add a couple cloves of fresh garlic. Actually, I'll put 3 in there. And then my garbanzo beans. And we'll take the oat milk, give it a shake because I know it's settled. And whenever you're making something like this, a sauce or paste, just fill it until the level is slightly below your dry ingredients. And that's how you know you have enough. I'm also going to put a lemon in there. Okay, there's our lemon juice, and everything gets granulated onion, about a teaspoon. We're going to put a good amount of black pepper in there. And this one needs a little bit of salt, in my opinion. And let's go ahead and blend this. I think I left it plugged in, yes. Okay, that's making the blender work hard. I would normally process it until it's just silky smooth, but I'm trying to rush here because I'm keeping everybody late. So this is my base for my salad. I'm going to pour that out on my platter. You can also do this on individual salad plates. Do little mini versions of this. And I have a huge variety of vegetables. And I have some dry toasted multigrain bread. I'm going to use the bread first and kind of stand that up here and there. Just try and be artistic. I have, like I mentioned, just about every good-looking fall vegetable I could find. I have yellow and red beets. I have yams. I have Yukon Gold potatoes. I have Brussels sprouts. I have some red onion. So what I'm going to do, I thinly sliced all of these veggies. Toss them with a tiny bit of grapeseed oil and season them with pepper and granulated onion, surprise, surprise. And then just wrap them in parchment paper first, and then foil, and then just let them slow bake in the oven at 350. I've also got some carrots here. And just get creative.
Can you use grapeseed oil as opposed to olive oil because of temperature?
Yeah, it's supposed to have a little bit higher burn point before it breaks down. And I also like it. I used olive oil for years, and honestly, I just kind of got tired of it. Grapeseed oil I like because it doesn't have a lot of flavor. So I can use it for sweet things, I can use it for savory things. It really doesn't impact the flavor much. Just, it's nice and light. I also have some zucchini. And I am trying to reduce oil. I don't use it that much anymore, but sometimes with the recipe, it just, I don't know, just nice to use oil. Okay, and I'll add a few Brussels sprouts and we'll call it good. So, Dr. Greger has a free app called the Daily Dozen, and it's a really nice app to have if you're trying to eat better. It's free, but what it is a daily checklist of things that he recommends you eat for optimum health. One of the things on there is 1 serving of cruciferous veggies a day. So cruciferous veggies, the Brussels sprouts, cabbages, broccoli, cauliflower, horseradish even is a cruciferous veggie. But it's kind of nice to have that app if you're trying to change the way you eat because it'll help remind you daily. I forgot my red beets. Let me throw some of those in there. Anybody like beets? The beets in the stores right now are absolutely beautiful.
Sorry, what was the app called again?
Daily Dozen. Yep. It's great. It reminds you, there's a little checklist. You can check off your water, it also reminds you that you should exercise, and it also has a reminder about the D3 and the B12 supplement. And the nice thing is that it tells you why he thinks. If you want that information, you can click on it, and there you go. So it looks something like this.